what's the value of your organizational culture? So now maybe you now say, well, I think it's pretty high because organizational culture is pretty important. However, many people then say, it is important, but, it is hard to grasp what actually is organizational culture. It's so complex. We rather focus on something we have as a tangible product, our product line, our sales and marketing team, our operational team, people who actually produce something. Is organizational culture actually that important? Because when it is so important for you, because without any doubt, organizational culture is very important. We all know that. However, when it is so true, how often do you actually talk about it when it is so important? Think back a week ago, maybe two, or maybe is your organizational culture only relevant when there's a Christmas party, a summer party, an Easter party, or maybe a birthday of an employee, which you desperately need to do tasks and work long hours? We're now facing a situation which many people saw in the newspaper already. The Great Resignation comes to Europe. After, for a long time, Europe said, it's primarily a US problem. No, now UK problems. UK firms brace for a Great British Resignation in 2022. Bloomberg just announced a couple of days ago. And the same applies in Europe. And when we look at the sources, it is Sanjay Raja, chief UK economist at Deutsche Bank, who said that the Netherlands now say we are the highest level of people voluntarily leaving their jobs since 2009. And now some people might think, there was something in 2009. Exactly. 2008 financial crisis. In a crisis, people reevaluate if they want to work where they are working right now. Did the banking sector recover since then? Did more people join banking? Certainly not. And when you now realize that more and more people are leaving and you think it's just a temporary issue here, the bad news, it is not. And by the way, if now immediately someone comes up with a magical solution, don't listen to these people. I'll just give you an example. Last week, besides my weekly article, I published an extra article because many people sent me emails about that. And I really sat down for weeks to find scientific articles that can help you how to have a vaccination strategy in your organization. And of course, immediately people emailed me and said, well, I have a different opinion, which is perfectly fine, by the way. But then people start to give their pseudo reasons. And my favorite last week was where someone says, I'm a doctor, so I can have a valid opinion. And I asked him what kind of doctor he is. And it turned out it was a so-called German Heilpraktiker, which is a 6-month course which you do. And you are as far away from being a doctor than Earth is from the moon. It is basically like saying, just imagine if someone gives you advice with that qualification. And by the way, when you now say any doctor for me is enough, perfect. I'm going to remind you of that next time one of your teeth is aching. I'm going to send you to a pediatric or maybe to an optometrist and say, well, that's a doctor as well. And we just give them the tools and then they will deal with your teeth. Good luck from here. And probably you then will be less happy about your choices. Because looking at what really happens now, people are now preparing for more employees leaving. That was not only reported by Bloomberg, and also not only leaving, but also more people facing or more organizations facing that people work part-time. And that means when you now look into your project portfolio and you think, oh, we have an FTE, full-time equivalent, and then you have a certain number, and immediately you have people in mind where you think, okay, that amount of people times, and then depending on which country you work in, 35, 37.5, 40, 42, or even 45 hours. No, this is not what you are having. This is not what you will have. And this is not how the future will look like, especially when we look at the horizon. Now the 4-day working week is looming. Looking at the first scientific results, they are all very positive. Of course, we have to wait a bit longer to have a significant amount of data to make final or more substantiated statements. However, at the moment, it doesn't look like that the 4-day working week will be a failure. And when people then work part-time, it means you have them 4 days a week for 5 days per day. So they show up at 7 o'clock and they leave with their lunch break. So half a day, proper half a day. Or maybe they start at 9 and just stay slightly longer than their lunch break. Not even talking about home office or work from home, working remotely, flexibility in working hours and work location, work from home, work from anywhere, all these approaches. So how do you want to deal with that? And how do you want to conserve or actually have a positive organizational culture? Now we're looking at the problems and, of course, how to do it better. Problem number one is organizational culture is a nice to have. And you can see that when I started this podcast and asked you, how often do you talk about organizational culture? And you realize hardly ever. It is always mentioned when you have big speeches, big events, and the CEO and other board people show up and they say, oh, we are not a company, we are a family. And people in their inside actually throw up when they hear that. So this is the only time when they mention it. Nothing else. So it's obviously nice to have, because you would never see, for example, a sales team only being mentioned once a year because people say, oh, the sales team is so important, or the marketing, or the operations, or the HR, or the accounting, or the financial team, or the compliance, or whatever else. Everything is mentioned more often than organizational culture. However, when you talk to people today, why do you choose employer A over employer B? They say, well, organizational culture. So that's where the problem begins. Problem number one, organizational culture is a nice to have. And problem number two is that privileged groups in this organization don't make any topic out of it or topicalize it or even speak about it, because they often don't see any priority, because they are so high in the food chain, so high on the hierarchical level, and formally they have the right to do anything they want. And that is the reason why they never have any negative experiences, or very few negative experiences. And that's why they think, well, it's not a big topic, is it? We are doing pretty well, aren't we? They lost the contact, the technical and operational level of their business. And that's why they think they have an amazing organizational culture, but in reality, they do not. So now they think, we might have to address it. And then the next big decision goes the wrong way. Problem number three, when you do something, it has to be dead cheap. I just give you an example. That's the point where they say, oh yeah, we do a weekend workshop 2 days and everyone here is so committed to work. They all come here for free with no extra over hours paid. They just love their jobs. Yeah. Do you honestly believe that when you say that? Because it is obviously not the case. If I ask people, what do you plan for the weekend? And they give me a list of everything they could think of what they do, the ranking of having an offsite workshop somewhere in the middle of nowhere with my colleagues from work is ranked pretty low, or let's say reasonably low. Privileged groups do not see the issue. And when they act on when they see the issue, they say cheap, 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 because they think soft skills are worth nothing. They don't see the value because it's not a tangible service. It's not a product you see. There's nothing where you say at the end, we have this product line, which the sales team and the marketing team can now take and sell to the world. So we make a profit out of it. And also it takes a very long time until you see the final results, or a reasonably long time. And when you now still think that organizational culture is not important or not relevant, I can tell you, you only need one wrong statement to ruin a whole organization's reputation. I'll just give you a couple of examples. KPMG's chairman had to resign only due to 2 statements made within a 45-minute meeting, and that harmed KPMG significantly. When you look at the German naval fleet, one of their senior officers had to resign only due to 1 statement. I'm not even talking about the Catholic Church and the former Pope Ratzinger, where they now found out that he deliberately lied. I am not Christian, I'm an atheist, but you can believe in whatever you want. However, even I know that the 8th commandment is that thou shalt not give wrong, testimony or wrong witness. Basically, you shouldn't lie. And now the Pope lied. This organization has issues. And all these issues at the moment are not only done on a 0% tax ban. In Germany, for example, where the state collects the church tax for no particular reason, they even give so-called dotations and fund different parts of the Catholic Church, which is, politely said, a disgrace. But that's a different topic. When we now, and by the way, it is the worst of it all is that there are many very good people, I think, in this church, many people who have their faith, who live their faith, who do not do harm to anyone else, who only have the faith for themselves, for their lives. And these leaders really make it worse. But now looking at your organization, when you think organizational culture is not relevant, you see one statement is needed and you ruin the reputation of a whole organization. And then, of course, as soon as that statement pops up, other people will pop up where they say, oh, I saw this. Oh, I saw that. Oh, I saw that. And then everything pops up one after another. Just look at the UK government at the moment. First, they said, oh, there was a bit of something. Then there was a bit of a meeting, bit of a party. Then there was a work event with wine and cheese. And it gets worse by the minute. Now they saw that Boris Johnson had a birthday party during lockdown with 30 people when any meeting was strictly forbidden. So here you see what the long-term damages of bad organizational culture are. And now, of course, we have to look at how to do it better. So in reality, organizational culture is the only thing you have. When someone is looking for a job and you say organizational culture is not the main reason why they work for us, okay, because when you say organizational culture is not relevant to you and you don't want to do anything about it, then people will simply compare the salaries and other benefits you give them. And these benefits, of course, cost you money as well. And are you the organization that is on the top-notch, cutting-edge level of highest payment? Are you? Probably not. Because many people will now say, we don't want to win by money because then the profit margin will be so low that our company can't sustain. We need people who want to work for us because they want to work for us. And that is exactly the point of organizational culture. And just because it isn't tangible or you can't grasp it or you can't grab it doesn't mean it's irrelevant. Basic 101 of leadership, it is never about you. Because just because you are intrinsically motivated, which is great, by the way, perfect for an entrepreneur, many people have an intrinsic motivation, but it's not designed or not present at work. They say their intrinsic motivation maybe is somewhere with their family or with the hobby they have or anywhere else, but not at work. And of course, organizational culture might be the issue here. But many people also say work is not my number one priority. So please don't approach any project when it comes to organizational culture by saying, I am motivated, so they have to be motivated as well. That is the worst approach. Basic leadership 101, it is never about you. You are probably more motivated than others because otherwise you would not listen to this podcast because most likely, at least I assume, you're not sitting in an office where your boss, your leader said, oh yes, just take your working time and listen to a podcast because I am fine with that. Most likely you listen to this during a break, during your way to work, during your way back, or during any other time because you like to educate yourself. And that already puts you over the bar of the average employee. But you have to work with everyone. And also, by the way, you need everyone in your organization. You don't want to have a work culture where everyone is super highly motivated and wants to be the next CEO, because that's going to be a culture of everyone wants to beat someone else out of the organization because the pyramid, when you go up, becomes pretty thin. It's a pointed object for a reason. There are limited jobs at the top. So you need many people who are motivated, but do their job and they do it well for decades without saying, I want to be the next person on the board. So never start with yourself because it is never about you. When you now approach organizational culture, it's an ongoing process. Don't start and say, we do a weekend workshop and then it's also, because it is clearly not. It's an ongoing process. It's not a one-off situation. And please don't do the weekend workshop because when we talk about work happens during working hours. Don't pretend that people work long over hours voluntarily when you use nothing else than social pressure to make them move in that direction. That is another piece of bad leadership. So you need an ongoing process, and it has to be started by the leaders. It does not work, what you often see in practice. Someone on the board says, oh, we need to update our organizational culture. HR is going to take care of it, and the other leaders talk to you, but the board is doing something completely different because we are also super busy. That does not work. The leadership team has to be an integral and leading part. That's part of their name, by the way, leadership team. When it comes to organizational culture, everyone has to be involved. And when, of course, the number is too high, because maybe you work for an organization of hundreds or maybe thousands of employees, you maybe cannot pick everyone up. So you have to elect representatives. So people volunteer. And when you have more volunteers than you need, then there can be a free, open, and of course, secret democratic election where the people get elected who then go for these or go to these events. It is very important that support has to come from the strategical, the technical, and the operational level in your organization. All three levels have to be involved. If only one says, oh yeah, someone else does that, we don't have time for that, we are also busy, as soon as you leave important levels of the organization out, this is where your project will fail. And now the question, of course, is where to start. And you don't start with that someone says, oh, we are so bad in X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. No, because that's not motivating. The first thing you do is, because what you want to have is, you want to have an effect where people see, oh, something's changing in a positive way. So first, look at what you're already doing well, or at least on an okay level. And then take positive changes there first, because they will be easiest to implement. Don't start with the worst problem, because it will take a long time to fix it. So look at certain parts where you're doing well and make them even better. After that, you look at problems, and then you have to decide, is it a problem which is standing alone, which rarely is the case, or is it an interconnected problem? I just give you an example. Often people treat interconnected problems as a problem which is often people treat a problem as a singularized, a low standalone problem, although it is an interconnected problem. I give you a real world example. An organization approached me and said, our sales team doesn't perform very well. The profit margins are too low. So I talked to the sales team, and the sales team tells me the purchasing department says that all the prices are rising. So our profit margin is really bad, and the competition from other countries is way cheaper. So we have to go down in pricing. So I talked to the purchasing department, and the purchasing department says that the board level said we need to have higher profit margins. So we had to be tough on pricing when purchasing. We lost a couple of quality suppliers. So now we have to go with cheaper suppliers. Our product is still okay, but not that great anymore, and doesn't really meet premium quality while we try to meet premium price expectations. And clients say, no, we pay average. And then we talk about import, and then they say there's additional regulation, and then there might be Brexit, then there is compliance, then there's a new law, or there's not even clarity about the law, and there's a whole chain connected. So don't say this problem is a standalone problem when it is clearly not. And that's where you need interviews, because these interviews will give you insights where the problems really come from. So once you started with looking at what you do well, and then doing even more of that and do it better, then you look at where are the issues, you openly address them. Don't become defensive and just say it's all okay, we are great, we're now doing better. When something is not doing well, tell them that it is not doing well, because people appreciate when errors and mistakes are admitted. So they see, okay, we actually can talk about this in this organization. And then you start to fix them. And depending on the level of interdependency they have with other aspects of the organization, it might take quite a while, because as I mentioned before, fixing organizational culture is not a weekend workshop, and it's nothing you do within a week or two. However, once you do better, your employer branding will be better. You save money on recruiting. You become an employer which is in demand. You get a better reputation. People talk to each other in the same industry, and suddenly it is way easier for you to attract talent, to win talent, to retain talent, and to develop talent. And all that with saving money, because your organizational culture is a good one. But it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, as many people say. It is now very important when you need more than that. We, of course, have articles. So, for example, the scientific article about the vaccine strategy and anything else. I publish way more than this podcast. However, that's only available to people who, when you go on expert.nb-networks.com, put in your email there. You only get one email per week. It's a very short email, which includes everything I published in that week. It's always available for free for anyone who's subscribed there. It's 100% content at free guarantee. And of course, when you now say, well, I listened to this podcast and now I have 50 questions more than I had before, let's talk about that. Just write me an email to nb@nb-networks.com, and we can discuss it from there. It doesn't cost you anything. When you now, of course, say, hey, we need a trainer, a speaker for an event, or coach, consultant, we have a mentoring project or interim management thing lined up, we can talk about that as well. But we can also just have a chat about what is organizational culture and how to improve it, and it doesn't cost you a single penny. I'm always looking forward to having discussions and looking also at other points of view. So just last week, I had a great conversation with someone who had a different point of view. But at the end, we aligned, I think, on 75%, 25%. We respectfully disagreed. We had the same goal in mind, but different ways there. But that exchange is very important for both sides. So let me know, and we can have a chat. And of course, now is very important that you apply, because only when you apply what you heard, you will have the change in your organization, which you so desperately want to have there. So I wish you all the best implementing what you heard and learned in your organization. Let me know if I can be of any help. And for this week, there's only one thing for me left to say. Thank you very much for your time.